Welcome to the Hero Factory Inspiration Series, a series where we cover the Hero Factory based mocks of the community to help you get inspired for your future Hero Factory builds and needs. This episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series is doing a bit of a special episode, clearly on Hero Factory builds. Not renaming the show, but I could. Hey, maybe if a new CCBS theme comes out, maybe I'll change the name of this from Bionicle to, I don't know, Galador 2. Probably is. I hope the new CCBS set, if it's coming, if those rumors are true, I hope it's Galador 2. That would be cool. Anyway, I guess what this episode is focusing on is essentially just ways that you can build some cool Hero Factory mocks, because it's such an awesome theme that ended a little too quickly, I think, because it had a great storyline, it had some awesome characters, and there's a lot you can do with the story as well as the pieces. So we're going to explore a little bit of that in today's episode. The first mock we have today is William Ferno reproduced by Shaw Tenada. So what I really like about this is, one, we've seen this before in a few other episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series, but we have another digital build. And something that's really cool about this is there's a few shots, like this one, where Ferno is in some really, really cool poses because, of course, you are able to create some really fantastic and awesome photos digitally, which may be a little bit harder in real life. So that's definitely one advantage of building over a computer versus in real life. So maybe give a few thoughts into whether or not that's something you want to pursue and do yourself. Also, really cool gun design that Ferno's got here. It's mainly built out of system, uses some of those new Nexonite triangle parts. They look fantastic. Very nice little design there. Cool to give Ferno some guns. Obviously, he typically has those sort of fire swords. Of course, his weapons always sort of change as his different forms progressed. But it's very cool to see some new guns. And obviously, this is essentially a revamp of old William Ferno. So why not, reimagine a weapon design for him, or put him in a new situation? You know, for example, there was the whole underwater stuff with Hero Factory, or the underground stuff with the invasion from below and all that. So maybe you yourself could do a little bit of that, and you could, make Ferno go underground or do whatever. Actually, wait. Did he go underwater? I think he did, didn't he? There wasn't an underwater theme, but didn't he go underwater at one point? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. If not, build it yourself. Now, something that I typically talk about in this show is some really cool designs that are very well shaped and very smooth. Whereas this mock has a very different texture to normal. It's a more sort of, some might call it a greeble design. It's a more sort of Technic-based design. It's got a lot more sort of detail to it. It's almost the kind of texture that you typically see in like Michael Bay Transformers. That's sort of very primarily, maybe this photo doesn't show it as well, but more primarily sort of techie, machine-based looking designs. And that's really awesome because it allows you to use a lot of sort of greebly systemy parts, or just kind of go a bit more ham-bone on the use of the Technic parts you put in. And it allows for a really different, unique, robotic-looking texture. And as we can see on the back here, there's some really cool stuff, like some kind of almost like engine exhaust bits there with some of those Lord of the rings there, creating a sort of exhaust pipe-looking kind of design. Adding some sort of horn parts all over everywhere to kind of round off things and sort of almost smooth them in a sense, but there's still that sort of technical, greebly sort of state to them, which is awesome. And then you've got a few other really nice details like these Wolverine kind of claws here on the top of the shoulders there, which is a very nice little detail and rounds things off quite nicely, but still keeps that very awesome aesthetic. So that's a really cool idea. You know, what kind of sort of texture do you want your mock to have? Do you want it to be super smooth? Because if it is, then you need to use a lot more sort of smoother parts. Or do you want to go with this very Technic system, greebly kind of design? Because if you do that, it's a really, really cool look. But it can contrast very harshly against a smoother texture, so definitely keep that in mind. Something I really like that's a very fun little detail which we can see on the front of the mock here is how there's a little bit of sort of blue that we can see through the sort of grills in Ferno's armor there. And I really like that because it kind of looks like what you might see on any kind of machinery where there's an underneath which is all just sort of mechanically bits that, you know, aren't necessarily going to be seen by the viewer because something's going to go on top of it. But because there's little holes in it, you kind of get a peek inside, and it kind of implies more of the sort of robotic element to Hero Factory, which is something that obviously Bionicle had, but Hero Factory definitely had more. You know, obviously their whole thing was we build heroes and they build robots and stuff like that. So kind of doing that, I think, is a really cool way to kind of continue and play on with the theme. And there's a really nice little additional detail that allows you to add a little accent color in there that doesn't overpower the mock. It's just a nice little detail that seems very logical and fits very nicely. Speaking of fits very nicely, really cool to just see that big Hero Factory chest piece there being essentially 80-90% of that torso. You know, you don't have to use thousands of pieces on one design of a specific part of a mock. You could very easily just shove one big armor plate on it and be done with it there. So I think that's great. So excellent work there. Let's move on to the next mark, which is by King Mashi and is called Hero 1.5 The Missing Link. What I love about this mock is the story that he's written on it in his description in the Flickr post. So I'll read it to you. It says, from the personal log of Mr. Akiyai Makohiro, our attempts to redesign the core structure of the heroes has provided some interesting results. On one hand, we have learned much about incorporating a modular system into the hero's armor and endoskeleton, and will continue to explore this idea further. On the other hand, considering a quasi-core into this new system causes it to become unstable, resulting in heroes with questionable ethics. One test subject has taken it upon themselves to take full advantage of the new construction system and has become an abhorrent amalgamation of hero parts, taking on a form that it believes will allow it to stop crime once and for all, no matter the cost. The subject has since been restrained and sealed away in the redacted, and I shudder to imagine what terror it may spread on our world should it be released. Now, I think that's a very, very fun story, and it was fun reading that just then, and I think it informs so much about this mock. You know, he's really played along with the sort of storyline of the original Hero Factory and kind of made a, as the name of this mock suggests, a missing link between the very first wave of Hero Factory and then Hero Factory 2.0 as it was called. So it's very cool to see that, to see the sort of blending of older Hero Factory parts, Bionicle parts, and the sort of Hero Factory 2.0 CCBS designs, and worked it into a really, really cool story. So I think it's so cool to do that, to have a very fun, awesome story like that, and then build a mock around it, because there's so much more character as a result with that. I really like this finger design here. So it's very unique and very much fits that sort of randomly assembled vibe that the storyline implied for this mock, kind of it being red and other parts being silver, and it sort of seeming slightly out of place, but because everything kind of seems out of place, it very much fits. And essentially the major piece that he's used here is this piece, which actually comes from a lot of the old soccer sets. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've bought bulk lots of Lego, and every single one of them has had one of those sets. So maybe you yourself might have that. It's a very cool way to achieve a custom hand design there. Obviously, you can see he's just used a Technic lift arm to attach it to a typical socket piece like that. And that allows you to, on the very edge there, use a whole bunch of other random pieces. I'll include a link in the description for the Bricklink sort of parts info for that part, so definitely check that out if you are interested in doing that hand design, because it looks very, very good. Also really cool to see a very CCBS heavy frame and leg design for this mock. It actually uses a lot of pistons too, which is cool because not only does that help structurally and help support everything on the mock, it also fits very much the storyline and the overall aesthetic. You know, you've got a whole bunch of pistons everywhere and it looks very robotic and mechanical, which is very much fitting with the sort of typical Hero Factory feel and vibe. So that's awesome to sort of have that double purpose there, having it be both structural and story-based. That's awesome. So a lot of really cool stuff going on with that mock from King Mashi. Great job, good sir. Let us move on to the next mock by Dylan Muse and is called Split Face Revamp. So we've got another revamp here from Dylan. Not going to cover too much on this because there is a bonus mock coming up after this, which is also by Dylan. So not going to go too much because I think the two sort of go a little hand in hand to some degree. This mock is very cool, very much sort of reimagines the original concept for Split Face. Obviously, he was this sort of very much like Two-Face, the Batman villain. He was a half red and half gunmetal mock. So it's cool to see how Dylan has reimagined this and made it very much more fitting to the original concept. I think, if I'm correct, the original Split Face had a typical torso part that had a bit of red on one side and a bit of grey on the other, but Dylan has very much made this mock as a 50-50 thing and done one side red and one side grey, really perfectly getting that nice cut down the middle. And he sort of achieved that through having this sort of black stripe there in the middle, which looks very structurally important, sort of seems like it kind of holds up the sort of heart-light reactor core there, which is cool because it kind of helps to reflect how I imagine it would work if it was a real living robot, kind of having something sort of very important in its torso that's, you know, something to do with its life systems and all that sort of stuff. So that's really cool. Also nice to see little details like gears there on the silver side, and then looking at it on the other side and not seeing that really helps add an additional level of contrast on both sides of the mock, sort of implying the split personality thing, which was very much important in the overall character that was Splitface. So, fantastic work from Dylan. Like I said, let's move on to another mock from Dylan called Hero Fortress 2. So, Dylan has made this post where he's essentially made all sorts of different characters from the video game Team Fortress 2, but has converted them into heroes for Hero Factory, sort of a blend of the two. Now, I think That's utterly genius. What a clever idea to reimagine a whole bunch of characters from video games in Hero Factory form. And what's really cool about this is essentially the main, I guess, purpose of this mock is to build a whole team. So you don't have to go too ham-bone on making really complex custom designs. You can just very much make really simple builds, which a lot of these are, but it doesn't stop them being really, really great mocks. You know, you kind of looking through each individual one here, you can see some really fantastic gun designs, and really cool to see how some of the typical mocks, which are just a very simple, like the set CCBS build, you look at some of the others that are kind of bulked out a little bit more, like Heavy here. You know, he's got bigger shoulders, a slightly different torso, and a really big, awesome looking gun. Looks fantastic. Also really cool to see another one with a really fantastic sort of spanner weapon design. Very, very clever. Also really cool to see an awesome turret. And now, obviously, you could take direct reference to this from Team Fortress 2 and see the parallels between the characters, and a lot of them are very close and very clever. But what I really like is how you yourself could apply a lot of these concepts into a mock of your own. You know, we've got this character here, which is Engineer, and he's got the really cool turret design and the really awesome spanner, which I mentioned before. So maybe you want to build a mock, or you've already built a mock, and I don't know, you feel like it's lacking a little something. Why not give it a really, really cool turret? And it could be very similar to some old Bionicle sets, and maybe they sit on top of the turret. It's very crucial to their overall design. You know, maybe they're a cute little small Matoran and they need something to protect themselves, so they've got a giant turret that they sit on and use to kill Makuta or something like that. Or you give them a really fun looking weapon like that really awesome spanner design. It looks fantastic. Also cool how that kind of, I guess it's not a mask, or that headgear that the hero has here is very, in my opinion, reflective of what an engineer would have. A sort of, yeah, I don't know, it's a sort of headgear piece that would possibly help them in some way when they're making stuff, to kind of get a closer look at some of the intricate parts of whatever they're building, things like that. So little details like that are really fun, and then really awesome, unique weapons that really improve the mock and add a lot more depth to it are also very clever and very awesome. So excellent work from Dylan and excellent work from everyone else on the episode today. That is it for the Hero Factory Inspiration series, if that's what you want to call this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully you got a little bit inspired and ready to build some of your own Hero Factory or Bionicle mocks. Be sure to check the links in the description to some of the other things you saw in this episode. Obviously, that Hero Fortress 2 mock, there are a few of those guys that I didn't show. That's because I want you to check some of the links in the description and check out some of the other things that these guys have built, because they are phenomenal builders and you should definitely check out their stuff and give them some love. Give them a comment, drop a fave on Flickr, all that stuff, because they deserve it. Also, check the links in the description to my social media, because there you can personal message me and suggest some themes or mocks that you want to see in future episodes. Otherwise, thank you very much, guys, for watching. Let me know if you got inspired. Show me the things you're building as a result. I'd love to see them. And that's about it. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day. Happy building.